Yo, podcast world. Okay, quick. Is this an ad? Kind of an ad. It's not really an ad. More information. Yeah. Anyways, I'm running a couple of seminars in next month. So, full day fitness seminar in the Clayton Hotel in Dublin, beside the airport on, I gotta check it, the 8th of December. So Saturday the 8th of December. Tickets are now available for that. As of now, I'm recording this ad the very first week of November. Over half are sold, and it can take up to 100 people, and then it's full. So, full day fitness seminar. That's definitely the one to check out if you are a fan of the podcast. I'll be covering everything from nutrition, training, sleep, mindset, very much the things I cover on the podcast, the fitness elements of the podcast. So a seminar based around what kind of nutritional strategy will work best for you, how to apply it in your own lifestyle, what kind of training program will work, and everything in between. Also, if you've read my book, The Fitness Mindset, the structure will follow some of that with some expanded ideas. So yeah, that's probably the best explanation of it. If you're a fan of the podcast or you're a fan of the book, my book, The Fitness Mindset, you are going to love the full day fitness seminar. The other two seminars I'm running are business seminars. So these are for personal trainers that want to build their personal training business or move their business online. So the day is going to be split up into kind of 50-50. So a full day business seminar, this can only take 20 people. So I've got one in Galway on the 1st of December in the Clayton Hotel in Galway, and then on Sunday the 9th of December on the Clayton Hotel in Dublin beside the airport. So that can take 20 people. It's going to be significantly smaller because I will be using the people attending that seminar, their business as specific examples. So everything to do with building social media, how to market your business, building personal brand, building service, how to structure your packages and price, how to move online or have that as an option. So there's more details on my website as well, briankeenfitness.com. You can just check out the seminar section on there as a bit of information on the business seminars, and the same with the fitness seminars. So that's what I'm doing for December. So Dublin, full day fitness seminar for 100 people on the 8th of December in the Clayton Hotel in Dublin, and full day business seminars for personal trainers or fitness people in the fitness industry in Galway on the 1st of December, Saturday, and in Dublin on the 9th, Sunday the 9th of December. So yeah, more details on that on briankeenfitness.com, so you can check that out, and I look forward to seeing you all on the 1st, on the 8th, or on the 9th. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Clean Cut Meals. Clean Cut Meals are a professional meal prep service and have various plans to suit your specific goals. They change up their menus every week so that you never get bored and can help you stay on track long term. I've been using the lads for nearly a year now. I used them back for my 6 back-to-back marathons in the Sahara Desert, and I've been using them every day for my post-workout meal in the lead up to next year's endurance events. So if you're short on time or looking to get the time back from shopping, cooking, preparing and cleaning up after meals, then I can't recommend them more. To get 20% off your first time order, go to cleancutmeals.ie and enter the podcast code BKF at the checkout. That's BKF as in Brian Keane Fitness at the checkout for 20% off all first time orders. If you have any other questions, just fire the lads over an email. And now on to this week's episode. Cue the music, Tommy. Hello everybody in the podsphere, everyone listen to the podcast. Hello everybody listening to the podcast. I'm going to do a quick introduction on today's episode with my two awesome guests from the School of Calisthenics. So Tim and Jacko are the two founders of School of Calisthenics. For those of you unfamiliar with calisthenic training, it's effectively bodyweight training with a little bit of a mixture of a gymnastic feel. So a lot of focus around pull-ups, push-ups being the main kind of primary entry movements into it, and then building up to things like human flags and handstands and variations of back and front levers. I love this episode. It's so good. The boys are so funny. Now they've got hundreds of thousands following them on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and on their podcast for good reason, because they're so funny and entertaining. So on top of giving a load of value in terms of what is the best way to train for calisthenics if you're a beginner to get started in it, how to add it into your training, or how to switch into a calisthenic program if you decide you need a break from weightlifting or high intensity or running, etc. And we talk about the lads' nutrition. So kind of whole foods that they stick to, and some of the favourite questions that they get asked. So my personal favorite was, does calisthenics make you taller? So we covered a range on this, a couple of quick fires and rapid fires at the end. The lads also have a free ebook for all the introductory exercises for calisthenics. So I've linked that on the show notes as well in briankeanefitness.com. Loved this. Like, I can't wait to get over to the lads in Nottingham in the UK. So we're going to go over and they're going to attempt to teach me a human flag, which is effectively where you're hanging in the sky like a flag using your core strength. So I'm looking forward to that. So a little bit of a range back and forth, a little bit of conversation, a little bit of banter, just because the lads are friends and they're just awesome. So I hope you enjoy. There's loads in here for anybody looking to see the benefits in calisthenic training, nutrition for being jacked, because the boys are in incredible shape, and then there's just a little bit of funny stuff back and forth on the background of Jacko when he had his awesome mullet playing professional rugby, and everything that got Tim into calisthenics and his trips away with his wife, etc. There's a little bit of everything here. So hope you enjoy. Without further ado, the School of Calisthenics, Tim and Jacko.
You're listening to the Brian Keane Fitness Podcast, where Irish fitness entrepreneur Brian Keane answers your questions and interviews leaders in the world of fitness, health, mindset, and natural wellness. Come join the fun.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Brian Keane Fitness Podcast, where we talk everything fitness, nutrition, and mindset to help you with your goals. I'm so excited today to be joined by my two awesome guests, Tim and Jacko from the School of Calisthenics. Tim's background is in the world of strength and conditioning, and Jacko was a professional rugby player. Neither had any gymnastic background before they started the School of Calisthenics, which is pretty incredible considering some of the amazing bodyweight feats that they can both execute. Like, I'm not even joking. If you check out their videos on social media, it ranges from human flags and handstands to back levers and muscle ups. Not to mention the lads, just side note, are absolutely jacked. So as this is the first time I've had two guests on the podcast during the same interview, I'm going to keep the introduction super short and pass you over to the two lads to explain their story. But with that, it is my pleasure to introduce today's awesome guests, Tim and Jacko. Lads, welcome to the show.
Woo, yeah. Oh, we are excited to be out. So I'm just trying to be more excited.
Where did that come from?
Well, Brian is one of the most excitable, like highly excitable people I think I've ever met, and so I was trying to outdo him.
Oh, you've done well there.
It totally worked. I was like, I like this energy. Let's keep this going.
Mate, thanks for having us on. It's an absolute pleasure to come and spend a bit of time chatting to you, and I appreciate you sharing a bit of calisthenics love with your audience.
Yeah, you're still lads. I got really sucked in. Like I was saying when we met for the first time in London, it was a few months ago. Was it a few months ago? A few weeks ago? And yeah. I'd been following your stuff for ages. Like, your stuff's class. Some of your videos are amazing. Some of the shit that you're able to do. Before we get into any of that, we can start with Tim, or we can start with Jacko, or you can rock, paper, scissors. It's totally up to you. Talk me through your backstory and what got you started into fitness, and then what brought you to calisthenics.
Yeah, I'll kick off. So it's Tim, for those that don't know my voice. So I started playing rugby when I was about 9-10 years old, and a number of different sports when I was younger growing up, but that was my main one. And then when I was about 20 years old, I played at university. I started having some shoulder issues, and I dislocated my shoulder for the first time, and then that set me off on a road of a number of dislocations over the next sort of like probably 8 years, 2 reconstructive surgeries, and I tried to get back to playing the whole time, and it was continuing to have problems with it, dislocated, another surgery, and I was at the same time I was sort of moving careers into to becoming a strength and conditioning coach, and I kind of decided that I couldn't afford to be injured anymore with my shoulders while I was trying to start my career as an S&C coach, and I was away with my wife in South Africa, where she's from. We're down by the sea, and for some reason, I just didn't want to go to the gym, and I thought I've got quite a light frame. I'm not a big guy. I should be pretty good at bodyweight training. Calisthenics, it looked exciting, something a bit different. Some ideas of what I could do with some of the athletes that I was working with, but also I kind of, in my mind, the logical thing when you've got an unstable shoulder is to learn to handstand, because in my mind, I'd done all the physio stuff in the book, none of it had worked, and I thought if I can teach myself to handstand, I can have some confidence that my shoulder's actually stable, and that set me off on a road of just exploring calisthenics and bodyweight training, and I come from a background. Obviously, when you're a coach, I use myself as an experiment a lot. So I've done a lot of different forms of training, from Olympic lifting, power training, sprint speed training, through to hypertrophy, strength endurance, whatever. But I've kind of, for the last 4.5 years, settled on calisthenics, and it was literally to start with. It's something that I dragged Jacko into. We sort of got to know each other around the same time, and it was us messing about with some stuff and having fun in the first place. We never really thought that we would be teaching other people and running a business in calisthenics, but that's a short backstory of the last sort of 10, 15 years, I guess.
And then what about you, Jacko?
Well, I'd also played rugby from crikey. I think I've got a trophy at home dated 1988 for Best Effort Award, which basically means you're crap, doesn't it? But you try to. So I was born in 82, so when I was 6, I played, and that was at Nottingham Rugby, and I went from 6 years old at Nottingham Rugby and played for every team all the way up into the first team, apart from the ladies.
Which with a haircut now, you're probably qualified.
Which I have a lot better than the mullet I've sported for a couple of years. Well, the mullet was actually called the greatest haircut in rugby at one stage, I think. Anyway, so I had, I think, 13 years playing pro rugby at Nottingham in the Championship, and had 5 years ago had a head injury, or I'd had a series throughout my career, but it was one final one in training that ended my career slightly early. I was 31 at the time, so no spring chicken, but I think I had a couple of years left in me, but that was sort of cut short. I met Tim around the same time through a mutual friend of the church who to introduce us, and I was wanting to get into S&C, and he'd gone into S&C through he'd not gone to university. It was a different route in, and so he sort of hooked us up, and he, as he said, he started to change his training around towards calisthenics and bodyweight. After my head injury, it took me quite a while to sort of recover after quite a bit of a break from training. I actually tried to get back to rugby for a few months, but eventually it took me a year to be able to run without getting a headache and some of the symptoms. But once I was able to get back into the gym, I'd always loved the gym. I would love that side of training. And once I got back into that, around this time that Tim was exploring, trying to learn how to do a handstand, which at the start was pretty funny because we were absolutely rubbish.
Awful.
Because we were literally learning from scratch. Like Tim, I'd had my fair share of injuries from rugby, so I'd broken my shoulder blade, my scapula in 2 places, got a dislocated full separation of my AC joint on that same side that has never been repaired, and a whole host of other sort of rugby-related injuries that left us starting at quite a difficult point. But nonetheless, we sort of cracked on, and I initially thought I was always just going to go back in and do weights. And I remember the day where I was doing bicep curls in the gym and just looked in the mirror going like, wow, you've got amazing biceps. No, I looked in the mirror going, what are you doing? Like, you could actually do anything you want now. Like previously you trained for rugby. There was always a game at the weekend, and that was like my motivator. And actually when that was taken away, I actually found, to my surprise, that I found motivating myself to actually train really hard and be really committed to it quite difficult without the end point of having a game each week. And I never thought that would be the case, but I sort of prided myself on that motivate. I was always motivated, always wanted to train the hardest. That was sort of my thing. I wasn't the most skillful player. It was all down to sort of like just hard work. So that actually sort of came as a bit of a surprise to me. And what I found with calisthenics was it gave me a bit of a new emphasis and energy to my training, in that I had something to work towards that was, it didn't replicate or change. Like, it was completely different to having a game at the end. But I had a goal of like, okay, I want to learn this handstand, I want a human flag, I want to do a muscle up. And those, the nice thing about those goals are a real tangible endpoint. That there's literally a time when you walk in the gym, or you're going to, wherever it is you're going to train, and that suddenly becomes the day that you actually, as we described, redefine your impossible. You do the thing that you've just been working for, and it might have been weeks, it might have been months, it could have been years, but there's that day when you finally actually do it. And that sense of achievement is, we found, and a lot of the guys that are out there following our stuff, as we call them, the students of the school, are finding that massively rewarding and and like I said, motivating and energizing for your training. So since I caught the bug with that, it was never looked back, really. I can't imagine now not training any other way.
Yeah, I can definitely see from your content. As I said, I've been following you for a long time, even before I knew both of you. And your content is so good at breaking down things like the human flag or handstand. And it very, I don't know if this is going to be a compliment, but you know that you started not doing gymnastic backgrounds. And I mean that as a compliment, because sometimes if you're following, say, someone that's been doing gymnastics for years, they're not able to break down, say, a human flag or a muscle up to someone like me. I'm like, look, I need it broken down into its most basic component. And you're able to put it across. Is that down to the fact that you're largely self-taught in terms of all the incredible things you're able to do physically?
Yeah, well, like I said, when we were starting from a point of, okay, we'd trained, and we both had trained previously for rugby, and that involves strength and power training and whatnot. But we also came at it, Tim with a series of shoulder dislocations, me with a broken scapula and dislocated AC, where your shoulders are, when you're trying to handstand, all those things you named are all going to base around the shoulder being nice and stable, strong, and having good range of motion. And we're actually starting from almost like negative equity. And like I said, we were rubbish when we started. And where we were training in our gym, no one else was doing it sort of 4 or 5 years ago. And we actually now see it as one of our best compliments. That someone that says to us, "What are you blokes doing? You just look like you're pissing about." And that's sort of exactly what we were doing in the first place, just exploring a bit of a different way to train. But what we had to do to be successful in what we wanted to, and like Tim said, we weren't trying to do this for any other reason initially than just, we might use it with some of the athletes we were working with, but generally just for our own enjoyment of our own training and doing something a bit different.
And social media profiles.
It's all about the Instagram likes.
But yeah, for us to be successful, we really had to break it down to a point where anyone could jump on and get started. And it was our experience of S&C coaching. I'll probably let Tim jump in at this point and go how actually our S&C experience, and he has more of it than I do. And that's where we actually first started working together, training Paralympic athletes, and how training a Paralympic athlete, how you actually have to, I always think of it as you've got like problems to solve, in that you might have an athlete with no legs or no arms or one limb missing. So, there's some sort of impairment that you've got to change your training environment to make it suit what you want to get out of in the gym. In that athlete, you can't just go, let's do squat, bench press, and let's crack on, because they might not be able to literally do those standard movements or Olympic lifting or whatever it may be that you want to choose. So you have to change and adapt and literally make up exercises to suit the athlete that's in front of us. Whereas with the calisthenics, it was almost just the same thing, but flipped around. So we're still problem solving, but the problem wasn't necessarily with my body, although it probably was. I was just not strong enough and too weak in certain positions. But it was, the problem was, okay, this movement is really complex and requires strength in ranges that I don't have. How am I going to manipulate the training environment, literally making up exercises to help me fit into the strength and movement requirements that I'm trying to do for this seemingly impossible move, like a human flag, for example. I said I'd let Tim jump in at that point. You must have something to add on that. Like,
Yeah.
And Tim's like, "Nah, I'm good. You got it."
I just didn't stop talking. I was like, and stop. I don't think I've just took my first breath as well. I'm talking too fast. I mean, I'm excited. I'm energized by your energy, Brian. That's what it is.
I'm transmitting it through Skype.
I think from my side to add to that is my career started in university sport as a strength and conditioning coach, and I think over sort of 4 or 5 years that I did that, I worked with 30 different sports. So when you're in a university environment, you get all sorts, from wakeboarders to golf to horse riding, cheerleading, and then you've got your rugby, cricket, football as well. And I'd learned to not see training as like training exercises, but just more to understand the physiology and the biomechanics of the human body. And then if you understand how the body moves, you can train anybody. It doesn't matter what sport they're going to go, because you've just got to look at what the outcome is, what movements they need to be able to make on the park, and then how do we start to look at recreating those physiological demands and positions in the S&C environment or in the gym. And I think the Paralympic experience is just a really pure form of that, because it massively challenges you when you're the first guy I ever worked with was this guy called Richard Whitehead, who was at the time a marathon runner, but he's a double leg amputee, world record marathon holder for a leg amputee. So he at his best he ran a distance in 2 hours 42. So this guy is shifting, for anybody who kind of knows anything about times for a marathon.
That's ridiculous.
But when a lot of your
marathon.
Yeah, he's fast.
Yeah.
Half marathon at 1:14. But when all of your assessments about how you screen an athlete to even start writing a program based on squat, lunge, single leg squat assessments, and you've got a guy who walks into the gym who's amputated through the knee, you have to throw all of that out the window and go, right, okay, how am I going to unpick this? And I remember back in the day, I sat there trying to write a program for him, and I was trying to work out, well, have we got bicep femoris? What is its origin insertion? What's glutes function when you haven't got when a hip circumducts rather than going through a standard flexion extension pattern? And I said to myself, I just need to stop and I just need to start and I just need to unpick it and just see how it goes. And we've done a lot of that with calisthenics, and the Paralympic stuff gives you the freedom to not feel constrained by anything. And you literally then look at the movement. What shape do I need to be in for a human flag? Well, both arms need to be in full flexion. One of them's got to push, one of them's got to pull at end range. So I just now need to come up with some progressions, which mean that I can train my body to adapt to it. So a simple adaptation to impose demands theory. And if I do that effectively, it's just a matter then of linking it together and combining the skill component of teaching myself and hardwiring the central nervous system to move in a different way and being able to put down the required amount of force in those positions. And Jacko tells me off because I often tell people that the human flag is easy, and it's not easy to do. But the principles, when you understand of what you've got to try and do, is you just need a stupidly good single arm active hang, and you need to be able to connect that through the obliques to get the top side lift, and the bottom arm is just pushing hard into the bar to keep the elevation of the rib cage up. It's not that complicated, but it does require some specific approaches to training, and we just really enjoyed that process of unpicking movements, breaking them down, building them back up again. And we're really passionate about helping other people who have never done calisthenics or don't think that they could ever do a human flag to have a route on. Because when we started, we really found that there wasn't a lot of information available for people like us. It was all from ex-gymnasts. It's like, well, if you can handstand from the age of 5, you don't know what it's like to try and learn to handstand when you've had 2 shoulder reconstructions and never done anything like that before. So it's been a very organic process, but we wouldn't be where we are without sort of my 10 years and Jacko's 5 years of S&C experience, because that's really bolstered our philosophy and approach.
Yeah, I think the School of Calisthenics, what did we actually start? It was like January 2016, so a couple of years ago. Whereas like the whole, like what you said, Brian, it's really nice actually for you to say that. Thank you about that how we break down the content so that it seems like it seems less impossible, even though these things might feel like that. And they certainly did feel like it to start with. And as Tim said, that human flag might not feel isn't that complex now, but actually when we first started, it was like, how on earth do you even do that? I thought it was photoshopped,
and I thought I was going to dislocate my shoulder.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I did. Tim was like, "Oh, this is the type of position where I dislocate my shoulder," and I didn't know him when he had dislocated. So I was like, rugby mentality was just like, "Shut up, mate, crack on, let's have a go. We're going to go this from a flag." I'm like, "If you're not going to have a go, I am." But actually, what the whole, I guess, the whole of our coaching has come from a foundation of strength and conditioning, exercise science background and foundation around mainly in Paralympic sport. And 5 years ago when I first met Tim and starting to transition out of like pro rugby into an S&C career, I didn't necessarily at the time was like mad keen on particularly passionate about Paralympic sport at the time. It just so happened that that's where he was doing all of his work, and I basically spent the first year of my career just following him around and learning what he was doing. But that foundation and base level of knowledge that you're almost forced to try and do and apply has really, I feel like without that we wouldn't necessarily be able to do what we're doing now with our sort of calisthenics coaching.
And that's the end of our really succinct answer.
Yeah. Works for me.
Next question.
Yeah, well, something that I'm curious to talk on, just as you're speaking on that, when you made the transition over first, and you both obviously had different reasons, even though there's a little bit of overlap, did when you started training for calisthenics first, did you have like a transitional period, or did you stop doing S&C and hypertrophy and go straight into calisthenics, or was there a period where it was like, right, I'm going to do bis and tries, and then I'm going to do a handstand at the end? What did the transition in your training look like for both of you?
Yeah, I was. Mine was really interesting because I was like a lot of people, the guys particularly that I've spoken to since, they're like, "Oh, I want to try calisthenics, but I'm worried I'm going to lose all my gains because I'm not doing bench press." And I was at the point where I said, I'm going to give myself 3 months. I'm just going to focus on calisthenics, because if I lose all of my muscle mass and I don't like the way that it goes, I know enough to get it back. And so I literally went like cold turkey. But that's a little bit about my personality. I'm kind of all or nothing. But and then that was 4.5 years ago, and I haven't done a upper body weight based session since I started calisthenics. The only thing that I touch base with on a regular basis, around lower body training, is some weighted lower body work, and then I occasionally touch base with some Olympic lifts just to make sure that I can still do them effectively. But that was me. You had a bit of a transition.
Just before you go on, Jacko, for anyone that's not familiar with how the boys look, they both look like they've been peeled off the cover of Men's Health. So just to give you a little bit of an idea, like by looking at you both look like bodybuilding fitness models in the very lean, muscular, like what most guys kind of go for in terms of look. And to think that you just got it from calisthenics and bodyweight training is amazing. Now, I know because I've seen how you train, but just to give anyone that is listening that is unfamiliar with the way you look, like it's so interesting to hear your transition in training and how you train. So just before, Jacko, you go on, I just wanted to interject that slightly just to give people a bit more context on it.
Just add to your list of questions, Brian, just to ask Jacko about how he got that six pack, because it's not fair to let people believe that that's just from doing the human flag.
Well, it was bodyweight training. It was a lot of sit-ups when I was like 13 years old. It's a curse, the turtle shell. Tim always says it looks like I've swallowed a turtle.
It's living inside him.
I did love the Teenage Ninja Turtles. I like pizza. Like, what's that? Which
All
one?
of them.
Which one likes
Tell
pizza?
Brian about your transition.
My transition was a bit different. I'm laughing because I was that guy that Tim said. I'd come out of rugby and thought that, I remember even saying to one of my mates, Tim Struther, at rugby, I was like, mate, when I finish rugby, I am going to hit the weight so hard and be so flipping ripped, you ain't even going to believe it. Like, you think I'm in good nick now, you wait till I finish my rugby. And
Jacko had this phrase where his ambition was to become aesthetically unpleasing.
It's called, yeah. A phrase coined by another friend of mine, Rowan Nirmalandra, if he's listening. It would always, and also too ripped was a to become to become so rich that
Offensively
people
shredded.
didn't. It was like, oh, you look a bit too rich. You're like, exactly. Anyway, but no. So, yeah. So I was in a different place mentally, as I said, and thought I was going to hit the weights hard and try to, and just sort of ran out of motivation. But I was, despite being terrible at pressing, like bench press was awful. Like I could barely lift 100 kilo as a pro rugby player. My shoulder pressing strength was awful as well, and a lot of it comes down to, like, I'd injured my rotator cuff on my left shoulder, and had, as I said, broken my shoulder blade in 2 places. So when you fracture a chromium and coracoid process and leave a grade 3 dislocated AC joint, because that's what the sort of doc said, we'll just leave it, we won't reattach it. It leaves you with a shoulder that's pretty rubbish. I remember my first game back playing and like tackling with the other shoulder, and the coach sort of saying to me, mate, you wasn't really that impressed with your defence. I was like, yeah, I don't dare hit anyone with this shoulder because it's just going to fall off again. But I pursued initially with, I'm going to still bench press once a week, still doing rubbish shoulder press, because my shoulders was just never actually, I rehabbed to a point where I could play rugby, but it was still relatively, I guess, unstable. And so it wasn't until I sort of finally I'm trying to think how long it was for. It was certainly for like quite a few weeks, but no more than probably like a couple of months, where I just ended up being like, crikey, you know what, this is just, I think it was once I'd done my first, like, the first thing I learned, or we both learned to do, was a back lever. Once I sort of did that whole redefining impossible, did that back lever, I was like,
can you describe for everybody listening just a back lever, because that's the one that actually, of all the moves, even I had to check the name of that move, because I'd seen it 100 times, but I didn't realize that's what it was called.
Yeah. So you're prone, so you're face down with your arms behind your back, holding onto either a bar or rings, but your body's out, suspended horizontally, sort of parallel to the floor. You get into the, if people are familiar with the Skin the Cat, where you sort of are hanging on the bar and you rotate yourself backwards,
like a backwards somersault.
Yeah, almost doing like a backwards somersault, holding onto the bar above you is how you get into that starting position. But it's the strength to be able to press your body out to a sort of horizontal position. You're trying to look like you're defying gravity effectively. But once I'd done that, it was like I'd got the bug, and I was like, this is me. Like, I'm flipping rubbish at bench and shoulder press anyway. Like, I'm gonna go after, like, they're just vertical and horizontal pushing. So why not work on a handstand handstand push-ups from a vertical pushing? It was like, well, actually, yeah, a freestanding handstand push-up, that is flipping way cooler than me lifting some heavier dumbbells on my shoulder press. And actually, since, we've sort of, through our own sort of experience, and Tim's been doing an awful lot of research to try and almost understand further, and also back up what we've been experiencing ourselves and with people and athletes we've been working with around increasing joint stability around the shoulder, and why actually, having trained like that, I now actually feel better, having still had, I still got a dislocated AC joint and fractures that, once you've broken things, they're never quite ever the same, but can do things now that I never thought I'd be able to do and feel way stronger. And obviously, you said that we still look pretty decent, even though we don't do a lift anyway. So we tick that box as well. But the thing that we're quite passionate about is actually, there's a series of things outside of your control when you talk about how your body's going to look, your genetics, what you're going to, and what you're going to, eat is still, I guess that's in your control. But there's a series of things that's going to affect what your body actually aesthetically looks like. We feel and we felt it ourselves that when we focus on what can we do with our body in terms of performing some of these things in calisthenics as our main goal, that's a more positive mindset from a mental health in terms of being happy with how I look point of view, because I'm interested in, okay, this is what I can now actually do with my body. That makes me feel great. How my body looks, if I eat the right things. And I'm sure you'll get onto that sort of stuff in a bit. But if I'm doing everything I can do, how my body looks is just how my body's going to look, because some of that's going to be down to genetics. And we've never, and if you want to take enhancing things, which we've never wanted to do or anything like that, then you're sort of stuck with some of those things like your genetics. And we just feel that's a healthier way to look at things.
Which segues perfectly into the nutrition. I'm curious from both of you, because I'm sure you both eat differently, or maybe it's the same, but what does your diet look like in terms of day to day? What did you have for breakfast today? What are you having for lunch? Like, what does it change? Is it the same? What kind of foods do you eat? Talk us through a little bit on your nutrition from both of you, Tim or Jacko, whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I'll kick off. I think nutrition for me has been a journey. We look, my wife and I look back at the times when we used to have crunching up cornflakes for breakfast, and they were good days. But we don't do that anymore. So this morning for me, as an example, was scrambled eggs and some smoked salmon, some nuts. So I don't eat a huge amount I have carbs in my diet. I'm not anti-carbs, but I don't respond to them brilliantly. So I'm kind of fairly careful about the quantities that I have. But generally, the major overriding principle is just single origin or single source natural foods. So we try and eat as close to source as possible, buying from farm shops and grass-fed butchers or meat from grass-fed sources, and it kind of falls a lot in line with what we think about calisthenics from a training perspective. It's a very natural way to move your body. Like, people will argue and say, well, human flag's not natural, but using your own body weight is actually how the human race has survived for a very long time. People got very good at surviving extreme conditions, winning wars, conquering new lands and whatever, not because we had barbells, which weren't actually invented until 1928, but because we just got body weight strong. People will have that ability. And we kind of feel that natural side of training fits really well into a natural way of eating. So we don't, neither of us use supplements really at all. Occasionally I've got some protein powder, if I'm being perfectly honest, but that's more just used as when I'm going to be out on the road, or like you will be as well, Brian. You're out and about, you're busy. If I'm struggling to eat well and hit some of the sort of my macronutrient targets, which we don't track, but just a general feeling of what we need to consume during the day, then I might use that. But other than that, it's as far as possible trying to get food from natural sources. And it isn't really any more complicated than that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're the same, Jacko. It's both. Your nutrition philosophy, does one of you lead that, in the sense that would one of you be more confident in the realm of, you know what, I prefer looking into different foods, different recipes, and then say the other person follows? Or do you just kind of both enjoy it yourself and just stick to the kind of the natural whole foods?
We both sort of have been interested in it for a while.
Both food is really like both our houses with our wives and stuff. We both love to eat and cook good food, but I think it's around that principle of like
whole foods. It's simple stuff. It's like, Tim mentioned about carbs, but and not going crazy on carbs, but it's keeping everything in sort of moderation. Because if we go crazy on anything, then too much of anything. So trying to, we're no saints in that respect. I won't tell you. I've just been in France and Italy for the last 2 weeks, and my diet looked quite different because when in Rome, you've got to have a baguette when you're in France, haven't you? Because that's what you're doing. You've got to have a pizza in Italy. But that's a small snapshot compared to like what's normal day to day looks like. Trying to eat whole foods with a moderate portion of like protein, carbs, good fats, and plenty of fruit and veg. And it's not necessary for us. It's not necessarily any more complex than that. I think what I'm sort of quite passionate about and find, because I struggle with it myself, is that the difficult thing, because those people can take that advice and go, okay, I can take those principles. I know that like a banana is a banana, and that's it's not processed. That's not processed food. Okay, I can go and apply some of that whole food and everything in moderation principle. The challenge I find it most is making that actually a reality day to day, and being consistent with it when the reality of life busyness of life is going to get in the way. And there's a whole load of like, you have to be prepared and organized to actually make sure you've got the right things to be able to then eat the right things and look ahead if you've got certain periods where, you want to have something really good at lunchtime at work, for example, but you've actually got nowhere to prepare it. Or that means you're either going to buy something that isn't whole foods and isn't what you want to have, or you're going to go hungry, or you actually need to prepare something in advance. And different ways that we can do things like batch cooking stuff and that sort of thing, using a slow cooker and cooking up like, a whole thing that's going to fit, like make 6 meals, and me and my wife can eat that 3 times. And it just trying to make it simple in terms of application, I think, is one of the most beneficial things, rather than there's no rocket science in going actually just eating less processed food and more whole foods and more veg and good quality meats. As Tim was saying, is that's no one would argue that's actually not a good idea.
Yeah, well, there's genius in simplicity. Sticking with whole foods, like again, macro makeup, calories, all kind of come into play. And for the general population, not so much for everybody because it's goal dependent, of course. But that's a really good rule to stick to. Like, if it's whole foods, probably going to be a better choice than the crunchy nut cornflakes, which, man, they are good though. Like, do you have a cheat meal?
They are good.
Yeah, they're solid. Like, that's a solid choice. I was those or Cocoa Pops. Man, I freaking loved Cocoa Pops too. Like, so good. On with that, just out of curiosity, do you have a cheat meal of choice, either of you, or do you do cheat meals? Obviously, traveling, pizza, etc. But do you have a cheat meal of choice?
Yeah, I think I'll probably speak for both of us, and Jacko can jump in on this, but I don't look at food like that as a cheat meal, because it's like I'm rewarding myself for good behaviour. If I want to eat something, I'll eat it, but I understand what I then need, what the consequences of that might be, and then what I might want to do. So one bad meal a week isn't gonna set you off. You're not gonna change your body comp overnight. But it's trying to, I think, from a health perspective, from us, of just giving the body easy things to digest is one of the things around like having foods which is whole, like close to single sources. But for me, if I'm going to go for it, like I did an obstacle course a couple of weeks ago, and I was as excited about the obstacle course as I was about the fish and chips that I ate afterwards. But that for me is that, but if I want to have a pizza, then I'll have one. But I think it's understanding like what the knock-on effects are, and then for us, it's the discipline to kind of go, we're going to have that once, and I don't need to then, that's not going to become something which I end up doing on a daily basis. But I actually, like, the thing is now we have a treat when we've done a workshop on the way back. We eat dark chocolate on the way home, like 85% or whatever.
You make 100% out.
I love the 100. The 100 is good. But yeah, it's those sorts of things that we don't take it too seriously in that sense. But I would say 95% of the time we're on point in terms of what we're eating.
Yeah, and it's more about health.
Yeah.
I guess, like, as we've got older, it's become more about, what's my body going to be like when I'm 50? Can I still do a handstand, or can Tim's got a little boy, like, can he run around with him, or is he going to have knackered knees and can't move? Trying to be healthier, that is going to incorporate how we train and how we move, but it's also obviously going to incorporate the nutrition side of things. And I think some of what just Tim said, it comes back around to that moderation again. And yeah, like specific, like neither of us have a specific, like, on this day I have this cheat meal. And like Tim says too, the idea to, and this is something that I'll not necessarily find easy, but the concept of rewarding yourself with something that's actually bad for you doesn't make sense. But I know we sort of all do it. But I think that's the type of thing that gets ingrained from when you're a kid. I remember getting my mum would say, "Oh, well, we'll go to McDonald's if you do, your homework or whatever." And it's almost like the wrong way around. You should reward yourself with something that's really good for you. But they are trying to tell someone that, oh, well, have a nice salad because you've done something really good. That idea is a bit left field, and probably doesn't make sense to a lot of people. In my head, the idea, it makes more sense the other way around. But putting that into practice can be can be tough.
I think one of the caveats on that is that our nutritional approach has evolved over years.
Yeah.
Like it hasn't been all of a sudden like I was eating cornflakes and now I'm an absolute saint with my food. It's more about like just small incremental changes that have evolved over time. And I actually don't enjoy eating crap food now.
Yeah.
I'd almost sometimes rather not eat than end up eating something which is just garbage.
And there's a lot of benefits to fasting, Tim.
There you go.
But yeah, I think you're always at the edge of your knowledge. So like when you learn something new, you can choose to then apply it. But if I think back to my early days at university, when I was still starting a rugby career, if I look back at what I ate then, it was flipping terrible.
Yeah,
but I thought I was doing a decent job because I was getting in my protein and but it was. But I didn't know. I was at the limit of what I knew at the time. I was trying to do my best, but I didn't actually know that much.
Yeah.
And I think as you learn more, you can then choose to apply it. If you go, okay, I think I found out that actually that's not so good for me anymore. So I'm going to choose whether you want to have it or not.
Yeah, knowledge is real power with nutrition. For example, I used to eat fast food in college, but when I was about 22, 23, I started to get really into nutrition around the times I started doing my first kind of courses along the sides of nutrition. And when you start to see things like the chemical makeups of, say, trans fatty acids and like how poisonous they are for your body, it's very, very difficult to eat those foods when you're like, I'm literally putting a poison into my body if I consume this. And that's a really helpful thing for people, because sometimes you need to know why you're staying off the food, because it tastes good. Let's be fair. You go to McDonald's, a Big Mac is going to taste pretty nice, but it's very, very difficult to eat it when you know what it's doing to your body.
Yeah.
The other thing I really liked, sorry, I'm just going to
on, Brian.
I really, really like your attitude to food. I just want to pull this out just because I know my audience will get a lot from this. And the negative connotation that can sometimes come with cheat meal. So for example, anyone I ever work with in programs, like it's not called a cheat meal, I call it a free meal. It's like, right, eat your free meal. If you've eaten 90% clean, 95% clean, have the meal that you want. I think that's a really important thing for people to pull out, because particularly when you're living example of the way that you look and the way that you live, to show that you don't have to be fixated on even the negative connotation of a cheat meal, which is rewarding yourself with food. I've got Lane Norton on the podcast on Monday, and he's big on the don't reward yourself with food, you're not a dog. And that thought process is really, really supportive for people. Just to bring it back a small bit, because I'm curious because I've got different questions. I could ask you a million questions about calisthenics, but what's the most frequently asked ones you both get?
Oh, crikey.
Do you mean
it's definitely how to do a human flag or how to do a muscle up. It's definitely one of those, like I would think from the outside.
There's probably two answers to this. We get there's proper, if you said if we gave you this the top one in terms of frequency, and if you're talking about like comments and direct probably direct messages on Facebook and Instagram,
where's the mullet? It's definitely where's the mullet.
They're a bit different to like the best, most common answers that will actually answer on a Q&A in a podcast or something like that, because we'll get a lot of questions like, will calisthenics make me taller?
I know, I get it. I get the theory, the lack of compression from the weights. Maybe they'll stretch it out. I don't know. But
I answered one on Instagram of the week from that, and I wrote back to the guy and I said, "How old are you?" And he's like, "I'm 16." I was like, "You've got some time on your side, Jay. You should have just been like,
yeah, 100%. Like for the next 5 years, calisthenics will make you grow taller."
It's interesting because actually when we started, we were 5'2".
Hobbits. A lot of the ones we get, a lot of our audiences, because of where we position our content, are beginners. So I think that the biggest question that we get is for people wanting to get started. Yeah. How do I get my first pull-up? A lot of stuff is around handstands. People really struggle with that because it's such a complex process to learn. And I think it's a little bit, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but it's a little bit of people wanting to get the direct route from A to B without actually going on any kind of journey. So it's interesting sometimes when we're doing workshops, we speak to people and they go, right, I'm struggling with my handstand, I can't do this bit. And often we're just going to go, yeah, you need to go and practice, or you're not strong enough. And you can see them kind of process it in their mind, and it lands, and they're like, that's not the answer I wanted, Tim. I want you to tell me exactly what it is that I need to do to handstand. And like, there isn't a thing. These are the coaching cues. You know what you've got to work on. You've got to go away and put some time in. And that journey is of massive value, but you have to stay the course if you're gonna get a handstand. So I think for me, those are two basic strength for people getting started, and handstands, I think, for me.
Yeah. And we've got a free beginner's guide on the website that's got 15 video tutorials it covers like pushing, pulling, core. That we literally we was the first thing we put together. So when we launched the website, we had nothing to sell. We just had this free beginner's guide, because we just knew because we'd experienced ourselves. Like you say, you can tell that we started from zero and we weren't gymnasts, and that we knew it was difficult to get started for us. And so we knew that, for other people, it's going to be the same. When we've always been passionate and want to stay passionate about helping other people, get started, because we know there's huge benefits to this form of training, from the physical benefits to the mental benefits to even just the fact that actually you don't need a lot of stuff if you can do it at home. It might be that just saves you the journey to and back from the gym. That could save you half an hour 3 times a week, and what could you do with that time? Because you've got a busy, stressful life. There's so many different things that we've experienced. We just want to, if people want to get started, we want to make it easy for them to do that.
Oh, I love that. I'll link that up in the show notes as well, briankeanefitness.com, for anybody listening. I'll link that directly. You can download it straight from there. I'll link up their website. And is it a guide, like it's a downloadable ebook, is it, or is it a video series? Ebook.
No, so it's a download ebook, and then there's the videos are linked within the ebook.
Oh, brilliant!
The tutorials.
What are the top 2 or 3 tips then that you'd offer someone that's looking to start calisthenic training? I'm sure it's all in the ebook, but even just off the top of your heads now, is there, and the tips may be different, is there 2 or 3 tips that you would offer? Because there's going to be people listening who are like, yes, I'm going to give that a go. And again, I highly advise it. I think calisthenic training is probably one of the best forms of training you can do, in the sense that, and this is nothing to do with the guys being on the podcast, like there's no point being under a barbell lifting 100 kilos if you can't do 10 strict push-ups. So it's a high end of guy or girl looking to build strength and body composition. Bodyweight training in calisthenics is a great way of doing it. But is there 2 or 3 tips that you'd offer someone that's looking to start?
Yeah, my first one is around embracing play in your training. It's an enjoyable form of training, because you're going to do things that you can't do. So we take people and beginners and we say, right, let's start learning some hand balancing skills. And then I've never tried to balance their body weight on their hands before. And it's fun. Like, they're going to fall over, you're going to fail, you're going to hit your face on the floor like Jacko did the first time he tried to do a frog stand. But you have to just embrace that sense of enjoyment and play. And when we're coaching, we'll give some progressions and say, right, guys, go and have a play with it, because there's so much of that self-discovery of mindfulness, of being conscious and present in your practice, of how you move, what happens when I tip too far, how do I correct that, and you become very in tune with your own body. But I'm really big on bringing enjoyment and play, and Jacko's the same, back into the training environment, because I see so many people that aren't having a good time. People say to us all the time, like, what is your favorite form of session? And I think what they want us to say is like, we warm up with 1,000 pull-ups and then we do 1,000 dips, but it's not. It's the ones where we're in a location, could be in the gym, could be anywhere, and we're literally going, I don't know, let's go and play around. Let's go to the beach and just play around with some movement and see what we can do. So I think that's the first one for me. And
the freedom of literally, how many reps and sets you can do, what rest periods you're going to use, and go, actually, I'm going to give myself the freedom. I'm going to just explore what feels good. And when your body, as if you listen to it, it tells you when you've done enough handstanding.
The other one for me is we use the phrase earn the right to progress. There's a lot of times where people jump too far. They want to get to the end goal, so they just go and practice the full human flag right from the start, and they haven't earned the right to be there. You've got to go through the progressions, and what happens is they go right for the end goal and they kick away at it, and nothing's happening, and they find that they have got to go back to the beginning and actually build that progressive approach. do the hard yards to get there, and you can avoid wasting a good month or two while you work out that actually you're not strong enough and you've got to go back and actually do some of that foundation work. Have you got anything else?
I'd probably say just don't try to do too much at once.
Yeah.
So you can get excited and go, right, I want to do a handstand, I want to do human flag, I want to do levers, and I want to do muscle ups. And trying to do
beginner, I wanted to planche.
yeah. Oh yeah. Either picking something too heavy or picking too many things, and because it can just be a bit too difficult to try and focus on all these things at once, rather than just pick one or two and just start to explore where you're at with them. And you're going to learn a lot about your body, where you're strong, where you're weak, and where you're lacking. Either the framework we have for our training is built on two pillars: movement and strength. Whatever it is you're going to do, it's going to require you to have a movement portion of it, like creating range of motion or having control through range of motion, and a strength component. You're going to find out which one of those or both do you need to upgrade for the particular thing that you're going to choose to start with.
And with your own training now, I'm curious, again, the answer may be different for both of you, or maybe it's the same. I know you focus big on play in your own training even, but what would a typical workout look like? Do you focus on what your main goal is now? So if, for example, you're like, right, I want to hold the human flag for longer, do you make that the primary focus, or do you do a little bit of every movement in each exercise so that you kind of keep on top of it? How do you kind of set your training up now?
Yeah, the interesting thing with that is once you've nailed down a movement for a period of time, like I don't need to practice a human flag. I can do it sort of, it's not in the right setup, but fairly cold, because it's ingrained and you've got that basic strength, and you're actually maintaining that strength through a lot of other movements, through my general pulling and pushing patterns. So there's generally for us new things that we're trying to work on, and there's some experimentation and play in that. So for me at the moment, I'm trying to spend a bit of time working on my planche, which is brutal, but a lot of it's a similar process to what Jacko explained before, and that having a goal, but then there has to then be, to support that, a decent amount of strength work, because what's going to unlock that planche for me or give me access to some harder progressions is not necessarily just really super specific stuff which looks like planche all the time. I've still got to go back and get stronger. So if I take a front lever, for example, you can hold the technical aspects of the position by supporting yourselves with bands, but the reality is, for people that can't do it, you're just not strong enough, and you're going to get stronger by doing the basics. So a lot of it always boils down to pull-ups, push-ups, vertical, horizontal pulling, and that's still a large part of what we focus on. So it's having a specific goal, because we like that tangible aspect of working towards something, but still not neglecting the basics.
Yeah, and they'd probably be like the session itself might look like. We always do as movement, what we call movement preparation. So just the mobility work, the activation work that we need. That will just be, some of it might be a little bit specific to the what you're going to do in the session, and then there might be a little bit of that play aspect at the beginning, or some work on something specific that you're working on, and then the back half of the session is around sort of getting globally strong.
Yeah, reps and sets. Yeah, put some work in the bank.
Yeah, I love it. That really helps, just because it's such a unique training style in terms of the way the parameters fall. It's a little bit different to bodybuilding. You go in and do 3-4 sets, body part or strength and conditioning. You're working for strength, and then you're doing your conditioning. There's a little bit more of a freedom with it. That's why I was really curious on it, because of just from what I've seen on your platforms, just even wrap my own head about how I would, because at some stage when I get through, I'm running through the Arctic Circle in February, but after that I've got a little bit of a free window of training, so calisthenics is the next on my list to try. You're gonna come to see us, aren't you, Brian? 100%, like that is 100% on the cards. I'm all over that in March. Pin me into the diary.
Cannot wait. Perfect. You're booked in. I think that one other thing to say on that is that, say, take the handstand, for example. I mean, any of it, but take the handstand, for example. It's you don't have to. We ended up going sort of all in with bodyweight and calisthenics just because we enjoyed it so much. But that doesn't say that somebody can't mix a bit of it into their strength training that they might be doing. Some of the Paralympic athletes we're still working with, if it's applicable, we'll use some of the exercises. Tim, you've got a load of wheelchair races that some of that planche work is really, really beneficial for. So, somebody could want to improve their overhead pressing strength because they know it's a weakness, and actually do a little bit of handstand progressions and handstand work to actually improve that shoulder stability that will then let them improve the strength of that vertical pressing. So it doesn't have to be, or you don't have to choose either or. It can totally be. That is a question we get asked. Actually, it can be a blend. We just choose not to use weights because we actually just enjoy doing purely body weight. But that's just our personal preference.
Yeah, no, I like that. I'm going to take a little bit of a different direction now. Just for the last little bit, it's kind of, I want to say kind of rapid fire, but more I'm going to throw random questions at you. So not necessarily based around calisthenics, and you can go in whatever order. You can go Tim, Jacko, or you can alternate. It's totally up to you. First one.
Go.
When you think of the word successful, who is the first person besides each other or beside the family member that comes to mind, and why?
Brian Keane.
And beside me. But I would totally take that.
Yeah. Well, you always say you tell us you've got the best life ever, so yeah, that's pretty full on, isn't it?
That's true. I do have the best life ever.
Crikey. That's a hard one for me, actually, because I probably draw some influences from a range of different people, but I'm also, I don't want to sound a bit obtuse when I say this, but I'm also like, I try not to follow too much stuff because I was watching some Gary Vaynerchuk stuff the other week, and he was like, I don't want a mentor because I don't want somebody coming in disrupting my energy. And I was like, that's a really bold thing to say. Like, I'm not going to go to that degree, but I don't know that I've got success depicted in somebody else that I'm aspiring to be like in a particular person. There are a number of different things I would like to achieve, but I think I've learned over the years, and maybe this has come to like at the beginning of this year, I didn't set any goals because because life kind of gets in the way, and sometimes opportunities come along that you didn't see coming. So I'm going to take it's almost like a very ambiguous answer, but it's a difficult one for me to do that. Have you got anything better than that?
Let me rephrase it.
It's definitely not a quick fire. It's definitely not a quick fire answer.
Well, it's not really like it's the worst quick fire. I'm going to reword that one slightly for you, Tim. When you think of successful, is there a word that pops to mind? So, for example, when I think of successful, I think persistence is automatically the word that comes to my mind. Is there a word that comes to mind?
Yeah, freedom.
Love it. Jacko?
Nice. Yeah, I was going to say consistency.
And do you have a person, Jacko, as well alongside that? I'm curious, will they overlap with your word?
Yeah, I don't like nothing. I don't have. Nothing springs to mind. That just feels a bit boring, doesn't it?
No, I like that though. I think consistency and freedom, they're two great answers. The two ones I didn't expect, but two ones that I love.
Yeah, well, the consistency is more about needing to be consistent to be successful was my way around. I was thinking of it.
Yeah, I love it. Next one. What purchase of £100 or less has most positively affected your life in the last 18 months, 2 years?
Easy. Gymnastics rings. Straight up.
Straight in there.
Because I don't need them. Like, that is my gym. I put those in my bag. Like, my wife's South African, as I said, we travel quite a lot. I can train anywhere in the world and I can get a proper workout with a set of gymnastics rings.
I'm looking around. We're sat in my house. I'm looking around, like looking at what have I bought recently. Like, what have I bought for less than £100?
Time's a ticking, Jacko.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'm rubbish at this. What have I bought for less than £100 that's really impacted my life?
You can go up to 200. You can go up to more if you have to. If there's something that you're like, man, I would really struggle to do without that now.
He is a high roller.
No, I know what it is. It was about £82, including VAT. That was what it cost to get my van fixed, which was so I've got a camper van that I did up myself, and it died on me like about 3 days before we were about to go on our holiday, which was taking the camper van to France and Italy. so that would have had a big impact on my life if that didn't. There you go.
Yeah.
Good one.
Good one.
I included the VC.
Next one. Who can hold a human flag longer?
Go.
50 minutes later, they're tied. I'm curious on that one. This is a question I meant to ask even in the main. Do you find that you're very level in terms of skill ability, or is there a very obvious difference in, Tim's ability to human flag versus the amount of muscle ups Jacko can do? Are you both at a similar level?
No, yeah, I think generally at a similar level, but Tim's like pushing strength and handstand work is his official title at School of Calisthenics is head of handstand, for good reason. Like his hand balancing handstands, his pushing strength is an awful lot better than mine.
Well, your pulling is better than mine.
Yeah, but I think some of it comes down to what were you previously good at. Like I mentioned, I was never any good at pressing, so it's actually no surprise that I find pressing harder. Whereas I was always decent at pull-ups and weighted pull-ups as part of the training we did for rugby for years.
Next question then. What's your favourite calisthenic movement?
For me, like anything which is on my hands. Someone asked me this the other day, actually. I think it was one of the questions, and I said handstand for me never stops giving. Once you can do a handstand, I can do a handstand push-up. When I can do a handstand push-up, I can learn a tiger bend. When I can do that, there's always more for me to do. There's so much scope around that kind of part of calisthenics, whereas a human flag for me is a tick in the box. I'm not really too fussed about taking it any further.
Yeah, it's I have enjoyed a flag in my time, many photos in different places. That's what I quite like about doing it. I did my highest flag to date on holiday at 400 odd meters, not on a pole. There was a sign saying that's where we were at. It's from zero. Anyway, but it's probably for me. I like doing anything that I can't yet do in a weird way. It's that thing of trying to learn something new, and that might even just be like like I'm really enjoying working on like my back bridge at the moment, which is more of a mobility type of thing. But trying to do it, it's the trying to do something that I can't yet do. It can be a bit frustrating at times, certain things, but there's something nice about. It's almost like the anticipation of like when you're going to finally be able to do it, and you get these like along the way. You don't go from it feels impossible, I can't do it, and then suddenly do it. You get these like little glimmers of hope along the way. I had one the other day with my straddle planche. I can't do it, but it felt I had that little glimmer, and that always makes me sort of excited. I think that's the thing that I like about it.
Love it. The next one may be training based and it may not be. What's the best advice that you've ever been given? And who gave it to you?
Okay, I've got one.
Go on.
It was Tim gave it me. It was very early on in my career as being basically self-employed. And he said, I can't remember what it was. There was obviously some inquiry came in about some work that was available, and I was like, I've got no idea. He's like, just say yes and then figure out how to do it later.
I stole that off Richard Branson.
Great advice.
That's self-employed life, right? That's the business. For me, someone said to me quite early on in my strength and conditioning career that when you're at the top, someone's always going to want to bring you down. I'm not saying that I'm at the top, but whenever I encounter those kind of situations, it's a reminder that you're probably doing something which has value.
Yeah, I love. I can't remember who the quote is attributed to, but it's that no one kicks a dead dog. That when you're moving towards something, it's normally a sign that people are going to start kicking you or throwing stuff at you. So it's in a lot of the cases, assuming it's not someone in your inner circle, your wife, your partner, that's like, Jesus, maybe don't do that. There's probably a good sign you're moving in the right direction if you're getting a little bit of negativity or hate. So really good advice on that one. The last one then, because I'm conscious of time, and I could talk to you lads for hours. I'm looking forward to coming over in March after the Arctic. That'll be that's going to be the deadly. We'll be like, right, human flag, go. Last question: if you could go back to give your 18-year-old self advice, either training, life, or anything, around the time of coming out of school, what would you say to them?
Do what you love. I think there's a lot of time for me over university and stuff. I was doing stuff because I felt like that was the right thing to do. And I'm way better and I have way more success when I invested time and effort in the things that I love.
Yeah, I'd say you can do anything, because I came from I'm one of four kids, and everyone went to university, and the idea is, once you've been to university, you get a job, and it has to be like what's the right word?
Proper job.
Yeah, proper job. And actually, clearly, I'm not doing that now, and I think it took me a long time to realise that actually there's a lot, there's so much we can do in life, and actually, whether it's work or not, it's seemingly the possibilities are endless. I was in the sauna actually yesterday, and what did a guy say? Oh, he was talking about health and safety because he wanted to throw water on the thing to make hot. Anyway, I was thinking, mate, you need to go. I've been to Thailand once, and I remember the biggest thing that struck me about Thailand was anything goes. I don't mean being naughty and illegal, but you can do anything. And it's that I remember coming back from there being yeah, you really can. Life, it doesn't. We get told depending on your upbringing, but if mine, it was a bit sort of the opportunities seemed a bit more in a box of you need to do this and this and this. Or actually, I'd say to my 18-year-old self, you can literally do anything. So anyway, it's a bit ties in a little bit what Tim said, do what you love, but yeah, go and explore. Don't be afraid to do something that is a bit different, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I think it's great advice on both sides because they're very, very similar. And I think anybody listening, irrespective of age, the only other thing that could catch you there, because that advice is amazing, whether you're 25, 30, 40, is don't get kind of caught with the sunk cost fallacy of, well, I've spent so much time in this job, I need to stay in it, or I've spent so much time in this relationship, I need to stay in it, or I've spent so much time doing insert X amount here, and even though you're miserable and you hate doing it, you think that because you've committed so much time to it, you should continue to do it going forward. I love that advice. I think for anybody listening, to adapt that and apply that in your own life is going to support you and just make you healthier and happier. Yeah. Lads,
I think there's one thing on that, Brian, I just wanted to add on, is that if you are careful about how you design your lifestyle and you're not taking on huge mortgages and massive debt and creating all this stuff around in your life that then needs sustaining, it's way easier to pivot and just quit your job because you actually haven't got all those commitments. And that's the big thing that my wife and I, she's self-employed as well, have done. We don't have a luxurious lifestyle. It's pretty simple, but it's afforded us the opportunity to make quite brave, fairly sort of calculated, risky decisions because we're not all of a sudden worried about how we're going to cover these costs. We can live on a fairly small amount. And I think that's something I would advise people, keep your life simple, because if you have that feeling of you want flexibility and, like I said before, the freedom to do what you want to do.
I have a quote right in front of me here from, I think it was from the book Sapiens, talking about the luxury trap. And I have a little note made underneath it that says, are you doing stuff you don't want so you can buy shit you don't need? And yeah. It's literally right here in front of me as I'm recording this, because I have to remind myself of that, because to live a life of freedom, or freedom's relative, but not spending money on stupid shit to either impress people that you don't care about or that you don't even know, or to make yourself feel better and numb out from a reality. I did it for years. I used to be a primary school teacher. And I know, I think it was Jacko, it was you that was secondary. Did you do secondary school teaching?
Yeah.
And I remember I used to spend my money on all sorts of stupid shit because I wasn't really happy in my job. Like, again, I liked working with the kids and I really enjoyed that, but I hated the meetings, the paperwork, the marking, and I used to spend my money on stupid shit just trying to justify, well, you're doing a job you hate, at least buy this TV or at least buy this new Xbox or buy this thing, it'll make you feel better. And all it is a band-aid over a bleeding wound. So I love that piece of advice as well, Tim. Lads, as I said, I could talk to you all day, and I can't wait for March. And I'm going to link up everything in the show notes. So your Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, the ebook, I'll have that linked in there as well for everyone listening, briankeenfitness.com. But tell everybody listening, where's the best place for people to follow you, find out more about you, and where do you spend your most time?
Probably the website, schoolcalisthenics.com, and then we're always on Instagram and Facebook. So we've got, if you want to get in contact with us, just send us a DM on either of them, and that's the easiest way to get hold of us.
There's tons of content on our YouTube channel as well. Just Google it. There's loads of stuff to get started with. It's our beginner's guide, but we've done loads of different series of videos on YouTube, and there'll be loads of stuff for people to get stuck into. They're going to try and play around with some of the
Google School of Calisthenics, and you'll find
you'll find us. Yeah.
I can vouch for that YouTube channel for sure. Like you've got so much quality content on there for anyone looking to start out and build on it. Like you've got you know a channel is good when you're like, they should be charging for this. So go check it out. You're gonna love it, lads. Thank you so much again.
Mate, thanks for having us on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Bob.
Quick message before you head off. Just letting you know my best-selling book, The Fitness Mindset, is now available on Audible and all major audiobook apps. If you're like me and love listening to books while you travel or work out, be sure to go to audible.co.uk or audible.com to check out the audio version of The Fitness Mindset. You can listen to a 3-minute sample on there, or you can download the full book. Also, last thing before you leave, if you try Clean Cut Meals, the sponsors of today's episode, be sure to enter the code BKF at the checkout to get your 20% off your first order. Clean Cut Meals are doing all my food for my next adventure challenge coming early next year. I'll be announcing more about that during next month's podcast, and I'm just waiting actually on medical clearance. Yikes. So stay tuned for that, and remember, code BKF at the checkout for 20% off your first order. Catch you all next week.